Cashflow Diary Podcast, episode 298.
Welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Cashflow Diary Podcast, the podcast that teaches you insider tips, tactics, and strategies for creating leverage streams of cash flow into your life. Learn from top-performing entrepreneurs, business owners, investors, and thought leaders from across the globe as they share their secrets to success. Like what you learn on this and other Cashflow Diary podcast episodes? Go to learninvestingnow.com and sign up to receive powerful tips and information that will help you succeed as an entrepreneur and investor. Now, here's your host, investor, entrepreneur, business owner, educator, speaker, author, and master facilitator of Robert Kiyosaki's cash flow game, Jay Massey.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Cashflow Diary Podcast. I'm your host, Jay Massey. Glad that you are here today because we are going to talk with an individual whose product you probably have seen, maybe even have tested, but what I really like, I've said it before and I say it again. There are many advantages. Many of you talk about, taxes and how they're, large expense. And I've always said there are 4 things you can do to get your taxes back. And if you haven't heard that before, go check some of the prior episodes. But here's a quick update. Remember, you can provide housing, provide jobs, provide energy, or provide food. And doing one of those 4 things often results in major tax benefits so that you can keep more of the cash flow that you actually earn. Now, today's guest knows a lot about providing food items, which I think is awesome. And I want you to make sure that you're taking notes, mostly because I think you're still going to learn some of the basic lessons of cash flow. And most importantly, you're going to learn how to go out there and go where they ain't, as they say, because I love the title of his book. We're going to talk about that too. And if you're wondering who I'm talking about none other than Mark Rampolla, the founder of Zico Coconut Water. Now, how many of you just said, oh my God, I drink that? Yes, that's exactly what I'm talking about. He's got a book out there. It's called High Hanging Fruit, but it's the subtitle of the book that I really enjoy. Build something great by going where no one else will. We're about to learn a lot, ladies and gentlemen. Let's listen to Mark Rampolla. Mark, you there?
I am, Jay.
Excellent. I am glad that you are here. Thank you
Thanks.
for taking
Great
the
to be
time.
with you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I mean, you're all about the globe. You're out there doing some great things. An article recently in Forbes, and yet here you are with us. So I appreciate it. Now, everybody gets the same first question, so I've got to give it to you too, especially the first time they're here. I tend to look at today's entrepreneurs, of which you are one, a lot like yesterday's superheroes, Batman, Robin, Wonder Woman, Black Widow, what have you. And I think entrepreneurs and superheroes have a ton of things in common. Occasionally we get dressed up, we put on capes, or at least we think we're wearing a cape as we go around and swooping and saving our customers from the evils and providing our products and services. But also, like superheroes, we have a beginning. Before, Wonder Woman was Wonder Woman, she was just a princess. Before Spidey was climbing walls, he was a photographer, just minding his own business. So what we want to know is before Zico, before the book, before articles in Forbes, before all of the things that even selling Zico to Coca Cola of all things, before all of that, who is Mark Rampolla?
Wow, great question. But look, I think I was youngest of 6 kids in a big family, growing up in a working class community in Pittsburgh, about as far from coconuts as you can imagine. In fact, my sisters remind me that one day my dad came home with a mature coconut, not the kind we use for Zico, but a hard shell, hairy shell, and filled with meat and a little bit of milk. I remember to this day thinking there was a little man trapped in that thing because it looked like 2 eyes and a mouth. So I think I grew up with a fear of coconuts more than anything. And, probably maybe like Peter Parker as a photographer, one of the sort of most formative experiences in my life was as a Peace Corps volunteer. here in Central America right after college. So
Wow.
in no way did I ever expect I would be an entrepreneur of any kind, and certainly not a beverage or coconut water one.
That's interesting. Okay. That there's so much in that journey that I want to know more about. So
Sure.
when it comes down to it, though, all of us have what I like to call a superhero moment. It's that moment from where we're starting, who we are, and then we realize we have a superhero ability that we want to actually share with others. Tell us a little bit about that transition for you.
Yeah, I think that came for me when I first went to college, and I grew up in a family that just had nothing to do with business at all. My father was an engineer, my mother was a teacher and a counselor, and much more very, very socially active, but sort of no interest in business at all. And for some reason, I just loved it. I just was fascinated by it. But I was sort of conflicted because on the one hand, my family's talking about social justice and racial equality and economic equality and stuff like that. Yet I'm thinking, hey man, I want to go out and make some money and be successful in the world. It was during college. It was a gradual process. But where I finally started to say, you know what, I want to combine the two. I want to figure out how to be a part of driving big positive impact in the world through business. And really my whole life has been about that since I was about, 18 is, figuring out, is it possible? Where do I fit in? What role do I play? Because I've always felt like a little bit of an outsider in the business world, not having grown up in it, not having, I could barely, I barely had a clue what a dress shirt was. I just remember like not even, having khaki pants when all the other guys were, wearing khaki pants to interviews or something like that. So I never really felt like a business person. And yet in the sort of social impact world, I felt like I didn't agree with that whole world either. So I felt like a little bit of an outcast in both, but ultimately trying to reconcile those two worlds has been the foundation of my life and my career.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you bring up a great subject because I know many people, myself included, have been conflicted from time to time for why does it feel like? Because it can feel like the objective of making a profit is somehow counter to the objective of doing good. And yet there's a way to do good and do well simultaneously. My question then would simply become, how does that happen with water?
Yeah. Well,
I mean, it just seems interesting.
Sure, counterintuitive. It totally does. And look, I think your question is absolutely the right one. And the decision to go into coconut water was a result of the decision to build a business that both made money and made an impact, right? And so I was brainstorming a lot of different ideas, but when I would put them against those screens, I'd say, oh, well, look, I could build a trucking business. There's a big opportunity for that in Central America. I can probably make a ton of money. But, is that really making the difference in the world, or the difference that I want to make in the world? And I go through that in quite some detail in my book about, the process I went through along with my wife, Maura, and some close friends and family. And, and ultimately realized, wow, the amazing thing about coconut water, and this is back in 2003, was realizing, and it's still to this day, most of what Americans drink is crap. When you think about most beverages, sugary sodas, artificial sports drinks, there's just so much garbage out there. And I don't blame that alone, but it certainly contributes to diabetes and obesity and bad teeth and all these things, are certainly affected by our diet, right? And so the realization was, hey, if we can contribute positively to that, man, that's a good thing. It's not going to solve world peace, but hey, it's making a positive impact. But at the same time, how do we make it cool? How do we make it popular? How do we make it mainstream? And so I think a lot of people that start out with good intentions wind up building, small niche kind of narrow businesses in service or products, where it's like, oh, I'm just going to build this cute little company or this great little product. It's going to be perfect, but is it really making an impact? My goal was to make that impact at scale, So literally from the beginning, the thought was, how do we build $1 billion, brand and multi-billion dollar category around this healthy, natural product? And how do we also make an impact from where we source it, right? Because, my wife and I had spent a lot of time in Latin America and recognized that, hey, everywhere needs jobs. But at that time, close to our heart was the need for jobs in, Central America. And believe it or not, that has a direct security impact on the U.S., right? When people have jobs in Central America, we have less immigration problems, right? So
Right.
all that thought process was from the beginning. And it was just who we are. So the coconut water became a way that we could sort of manifest this goal that we wanted to make and
Okay,
make
so
money along the
this
way.
brings up a question because you sound a lot alike. Some of the decisions you guys are making are very similar to how we made decisions as it relates to real estate. Because I've often told people that I don't necessarily like real estate. I like the benefits of real estate. I like
Right.
being able to provide jobs and take care of people. I mean, if spoons could give the same benefits, I'd be doing spoons, but spoons
Exactly.
don't. Is that similar? Okay, I was going to say, is that similar to what you're talking about?
Yeah, it totally is. I mean, I think that maybe the difference is I really love coconut water and I love everything about it. But look, it's a product, right? But what I really love about it is, and this was part of our decision choice as well, was to, the way we chose to build the business was, for example, active sports, right? Sports and outdoor recreation and that stuff. That's right up my alley. So for 10 years, my weekends was, hey, I'm going out to a triathlon or a biking event, and you know what? And when maybe I'm participating in it, but I got me or some staff or giving product away there. We're hanging out with cool people. We get to be part of this whole kind of natural food, movement, and I'm sure it factors into your choices about what you do in real estate. I mean, I'm sure you've got places you could figure out a way to make money in some places that you might not want to be part of that community, and that's certainly what it was for us.
Got it. Yeah, no, that I get it completely, and it makes 100% sense. So I find it interesting that, well, let me ask you this question, because my staff and team has at times have said we feel more like we're on a mission than we're in a business. Do you guys have that same type of thing going on?
Absolutely. We had that to our core. And what I find is, without a doubt, that when a business has a mission, right, it's more than just about making money. They ultimately become more successful and, in fact, make more money, right? Because, look, your employees are a prime example, right? They're probably young, smart, aggressive, have a lot of opportunities. They want to be part of something more than just putting money in your pocket and even in their own pocket. Everybody wants to be part of a mission, right? Think about, the mission to Mars. Think about Lewis and Clark. Think about, going to the moon. People get jazzed and excited about doing something that makes an impact. In our case, it was bringing healthy beverages to people. It was encouraging healthy, natural, active lifestyle. It's building a brand that stood for something in the world, and it's making an impact in the countries where we source. And so that's something that attracted top talent, it attracted investors, and it ultimately attracted Coca Cola.
Yeah, exactly. You got somebody's attention.
Yeah.
So now, one of the things that I mentioned at the beginning was the subtitle of the book. I mean, high hanging fruit, first of all, that's different because everyone always think about low hanging fruit, but build something great by going where no one else will. So there's two concepts inside there for me, the building something great, and then by going where no one else will. Can you unpack that a little bit for us so that we can understand what you mean?
Sure. Well, the immediate play on words a little bit is look, coconuts are, how many billions of people have lived in the tropics, right? And look overhead or never looked overhead every day to think about there's a multi-billion-dollar business sitting over their heads. How many millions, tens of millions of Americans and Europeans and Canadians have traveled to the tropics, right? And so part of the idea is, hey, look, right around us, there are ideas. I just happen to look overhead and see it in coconut water. But I think there's two bigger ideas as well I was trying to get across in the book. One is, look, to really build something great, you got to be different. You got to take a leap of faith, go after something that's unique. That's, and maybe it's happened to be a whole new category like coconut water, but sometimes it's a different packaging, or it's a different real estate strategy, or it's a different community. It's something, or a different way of approaching it, high service or really low price or high value added. You got to differentiate, right? And so but the final twist on it really is, for lack of a better term, I'm going to call it spiritual. Man, to the extent that you are building something that is more than about money, that is more than about you, that is more than about just what's in front of you. When you are really reaching higher for something that other people aren't thinking about, I think that's the way to define success and achieve success. That includes family and friends and community and impact, and frankly, making plenty of money.
Absolutely. Now, you said by going where no one else will. Was there were people not willing to go, or did they just not see the opportunity? What do you mean by that?
Great question. Well, in the coconut water world, and I've seen this again and again, there had been, coconut water has existed forever, right? In some form or another, basically inside not that people would split open with a machete and drink it out. But there was a small coconut water business in the US, basically canned artificial high sugar, products. There had been at least 5 to 10 entrepreneurs before we launched that had tried to do what we were doing, bring a higher quality coconut water somewhat to the mainstream. They had all failed. And we had very good, tough competitors that launched around the same time we did. So it's not like we were doing this in a vacuum. But the reality is, when you look at the beverage industry, 97% of beverages never make it over about $1 million in sales. And nobody makes money if you're only $1 million in sales. And the reality is, although there's a lot of factors that play into that, part of it is pure tenacity, willingness to do whatever it takes and stick with it. Because, look, it took us 5 years to get to the point where we had decent confidence that we could pay our credit bills and pay our mortgage bills, right? I wish I had read what you have. Yeah, I'll get into that. Yeah. But in hindsight, I could have done a lot of things differently. But basically, and even by that point, 5 years later, I was making less money than I made in a corporate job, right? But after that, it was really a full 9 years until we really started to see a really, really good financial return. How many people are willing to wait that long? And so part of it is sometimes if you really, really want to go after something, then you're going to go after it until you win, and that may take a decade or more.
Okay, this is awesome. So you just said something. You said a lot of things that I think many entrepreneurs of all sizes and ages need to hear, because there can be the perception that, oh man, in 6 months from now, everything's going to be great, and they just started today.
That's right.
You said nearly a decade. So it only took you 10 years to be an overnight success.
Right. Exactly.
So you've got lessons. Specifically in that first 5-year period, what I want to know is, what do you now know that you wish you knew during that 5-year period? Because there could be someone right now in the middle of their 5-year period that you can rescue. Okay. Well, whether you're in the 5-year period, 30-day period, your first day period, what's really cool about the answer you're about to hear is it's going to set your expectation properly. Speaking of setting expectations, here's something I'd like to set for your expectation. I want to give you a copy of my book, Cash Flow Diary, 10 Steps to Creating Wealth in Any Economy. Why? Because it will set your expectation properly for what you might expect as you get started in your journey. Just go over to cashflowdiary.com/free book. Again, cashflowdiary.com/free book. Put in name and email, and we'll send you a PDF copy immediately. And for those of you who like, the audio kind, you get a special discount as well. Just go through the same process over at Cashflow Diary at cashflowdiary.com/free book, cashflowdiary.com/free book, and you'll be able to get started. Now, let's listen to how Mark is going to rescue you.
Yeah, look, so a couple things. The one I'd say is to your point earlier, right? If you are really on a mission and committed to, changing the world in this way, and that this is what you are meant to do, then you know what? As long as you pay your bills, put some food on the table, does it really matter? Do you really need that? That new car, that big trip, those crazy expenses, right? Of course, we all want them, but do you really need them? And I think to the extent that entrepreneurs can delay their wants and desires and focus on, the impact they want to make, that absolutely correlates with success, right? Now, there's always that question of, hey, when do you give up? When do you know you're on a dead end? You got to be rational, right? We had really good feedback. So consumers were telling us they loved Zico out of the gate, right? Unfortunately, there just weren't quite enough of them. And we learned, and there's ways that you can sort of accelerate things. But we had enough good feedback to know that we were on to something. Two additional things I learned is, one, in that business, and depending on the business you're in, it does take some money to make money, right? I mean, you from what I understand about your story and many others, you had incredible success starting with very, very little, right? There's ways to do that, and I applaud people that can do that. But in a lot of businesses, it takes a little bit of money, and sometimes a lot of money to get going, right? So, and I wish I didn't have them, but it would have been nice to have a little bit more money out of the gate. But I'll tell you something. It's not a requirement. If there's one mistake I made, I came in with a corporate mindset. I was a corporate guy. I ran a pretty big business. And in a corporate world, it's easy to say, hey, hire top talent, spend some money, do the market research, do all this garbage that you don't need to do. So I easily spent, no joke, Jay, I spent a couple $100,000 that I brought in from investors that I didn't need to spend, and I've seen so many smart entrepreneurs build incredible businesses with very little capital. One that comes to mind is a good friend of mine, Sarah Blakely, that built Spanx, $1 billion brand today, starting with, I think, like $5,000, something like that. And so, it can be done. It takes a lot of work, a lot of diligence, and it takes the kind of can-do attitude that says, you know what, I'm not going to let anything stand in my way. So if I don't have money, I'm going to have to figure it out.
Well, okay, and you actually were that's a perfect segue right into what I was going to ask, is because I know there are a number of entrepreneurs, would-be entrepreneurs, people who feel trapped from time to time, going, I would love to take those steps. They're saying, Mark, what you're saying sounds exactly right. I've got that mission. I've got a passion and a vision and something I want to make happen. However, I don't want to get started until I understand all the pieces of the puzzle. How my experience has been,
right.
I need to be comfortable working in some form of unknowns at some point.
Yes.
And I'm curious to know if that's something you've encountered.
Absolutely. Oh my God. Look, I thought I kind of had it together with an MBA from Duke University, and trained in the corporate world, and running $100 million business. I realized there are 1,000 entrepreneurs that knew 10 times what I knew because they just jumped in. And to your point, you got to know what you don't know. And you got to be willing to learn all the pieces of a business, but sometimes there's no better way to do that than jumping in. And so it wasn't until I quit my job, put some savings into this business and started to say, oh my God, I need to figure it out. And how did I figure it out? I talked to everyone I could find, right? And I asked them for advice. And what I realized is generally, smart, successful, decent humans will give advice advice, particularly to young entrepreneurs. So I talked to people that had founded beverage companies, people that were big distributors, people that were retailers. I talked to guys that were restocking the shelves of the beverage coolers, people that were driving the trucks of the beverage cooler, people that were salespeople and operations people, anybody I could find. And I was picking their brains. What can you teach me about this? I read, the history of Red Bull and Monster and vitamin water and, back to the Coke and Pepsi days. Right. And I just tried to absorb it all and would, kind of write it out. I can remember drawing out these models about the way I thought the beverage industry worked. I could do it in 2 seconds today. It took me, 3 weeks, okay, this guy produces it. This guy sends the cans in. This guy co-packs it. This guy distributes it. This guy carries it. This guy sells, right? And all those, all that learning was a baptism by fire, but ultimately, gave me a knowledge base to really figure out a path, because there's never one way, but figure out, okay, this is kind of the way these other people have done it. This is the way I'm going to try to do it. And we're going to learn, right? We're going to make mistakes and learn and get better, but all based on, really deep knowledge of a particular industry.
Got it. Now, in that list of people that you just rattled off of who you were talking to, I noticed there were some people who were distinctly missing. Chief among them, you didn't say, you didn't call your cousin Vinny or your uncle or, the guy you already knew down the street and were hanging out with to find out. So I'm going to say that, I'm just going to say that it's not just asking questions, but it's finding the network of individuals that are that could have related experience.
That's right.
How important has that mentorship or being willing to learn from other people been for all the things that you've done?
Jay, I stand on the shoulders of giants, right? I mean, we all do. Everything I know, I learned from somebody else. And that's true of everyone, right? Mm-hmm, and what you said is very true. And, and I'll tell you, I am not a natural networker. You know what I mean? I know. In college or even in graduate school, nobody would have paid but I forced myself to get out and talk to people. And I was very, very selective about it, right? But it's easy to start at the top. And in our world, I realize I'm not going to learn anything from the CEO of Coke or Pepsi, but I can learn something from the founder and CEO of Vitamin Water, of Nantucket Nectars, of Honest Tea, companies that were successful, 2, 3, 4, 5 years ahead of me, right? And I found founders were ones that were really happy to help and super helpful. And then I would talk to their VP of sales and their VPs of operations. And it turns out, not a lot of people are going to the founders and CEOs all the time. But, I found a guy that was, head of sales for a region of a beverage company. Man, I bought him lunch, I bought him a coffee, I sent him a wonderful thank you note, and found that those sort of loose connections, in a way, are the ones that are the most powerful.
Got it. So here's a question. Walk me through the day that you get a call and Coca Cola is like, we're interested. Yeah.
Well, it's funny that happened a couple of times, and I write about it in the book in various phases. And there's kind of the interest, and then there's the deal that happened. So what I remember, my first connection to Coke came in a distributor in New York City. So the distributor we used that carried Zico and brought it into the stores had a really good track record of helping to build other brands, Vitamin Water, Nantucket Nectars, some of the other ones I mentioned. And we were fortunate to get in with them and busted our butts to make sure that Zico was successful with them. And we were small, but we were their fastest growing brand. And so when the Coke guys used to come there to kind of keep a pulse on what's new, what's hot, what's cool, and kind of what the future may hold. And so I remember meeting a Coke guy there. And he said, Mark, you're not going to believe this. Matt introduced ourselves. He said, you're not going to believe this. We just completed some research on, sort of trends in the food and beverage industries, not just beverages. And what's kind of hot, what's cool, what's likely to be the future. And Zico showed up on the map. Now, we were a business that was no more than, probably 3 million in sales at that time, probably less. And he said, can you believe this? This was supposed to represent nationwide and all the big trends, and not coconut water, but Zico showed up on the map. Can you believe that? And my response to him was, actually, yeah. And let me ask you some questions. You probably did this research mainly in New York City. And he said, yep. And I said, let me guess, you selected sort of 20 something. This was before they called them millennials, but today what you might call millennial consumers that are healthy and active. And he said, yup. And let me guess, you did research in places like Whole Foods and gyms and yoga studios and runners. And he's like, yup. And I'm like, well, that's our audience. And he's like, well, how did you know that? And I'm like, the same reason you think they're influencers are the reasons we targeted them as consumers, right? So I said, Scott, you may not want to hear this, but I wanted you to see that, and he was blown away, right? Blown away that we were thinking that far ahead, and really on that right trajectory. So that was probably 2000 and I don't know, 8, 7, maybe even 2007. So, 3 years before Coke made their first investment, and 6 years before they ultimately purchased the company. So relationships take that long to cultivate in this world,
Well, and I'm glad you said that, because oftentimes people come to me because we do a fair amount of instruction on how to raise capital, get in front of investors and do those types of things. But the expectation is, okay, it's Friday. Jay, I need a private investor by Saturday or Monday. I'm like, how's that going to work? Exactly. There's more to it than that. There's just so much more.
I'll give you an example. So much more. One company we recently invested in, it's called Rebel, REBBL. It's a super cool, healthy beverage out of San Francisco. I've known the founder for probably 5 years, right?
Wow.
I knew a business he worked for before. He did some work for me before. We developed a relationship. We're friends, but it wasn't a deep friendship. I knew he joined this company. He tried to get me invest early on. I didn't like the products. I told him some suggestions I'd make. And I told him flat out, you're not the growth CEO. I love you like a brother. You're a genius, but you are not a growth CEO. Go find a growth CEO and call me. Well, you know what? This guy comes back, tweaks the formula, builds an even better brand, goes out and gets one of the best people I've ever met as a CEO for a business like this. And I'm like, where do I sign? Oh, and by the way, he has other investors lined up. Then he calls me and tells me there's an opportunity to invest, and we're in, right? It takes a long, long time. And it's the entrepreneurs that, they're going to figure it out, right? If somebody's going to come to me and think I'm going to solve their problems with a check, forget about it. I want to know that they've got the ball. They've got it under control. And I'll help when I need to, and I'll help a lot. But I want to know that I've known an entrepreneur for a while. I know 20 people that know them. They've got a great relationship. Because my view as well is, look, businesses fail all the time, right? So if this guy's business fails, so it fails, right? We failed together. But I believe he's going to start something else. And I want to be there for him. So it's a long life. It's a long career. It's a small world. And so I think, you got to build those relationships.
Yeah.
For the long term.
Got it. Now, you mentioned something really quickly, and I don't know if everybody picked up on it. You said a company that you recently invested in. So obviously, as you said, Coke eventually, you've exited from Zico. So what have you been up to now?
Yeah, so Coke purchased all of Zico at the end of 2013. I was sort of planning for my exit from well before that. I mean, my personal goal was to build the business to a point. 10 years was kind of my personal goal, and it was nine and a half years. And I'm a believer sometimes in closing one door to see what else opens up. And so, decided it was time to walk away, but had brought in a number two from Coke that worked with me for years, so the business was in good hands. So I started doing a little bit of angel investing. I thought it was just going to be for fun, kind of on the side, while I took a break and figured out what was my next project. Mm-hmm. But in fact, I realized I loved it. I loved kind of finding, entrepreneurs, vetting ideas, debating ideas, being an investor and an advisor, and frankly, not having all the responsibility of running the damn thing and being able to, play that sort of role. And I also started to have some people I knew in the industry that wanted to follow along, previous investors in Zico that wanted to follow along. And so I thought, well, what do you do if you want to be a professional investor and have people be able to contribute to that? Well, it's called a venture capitalist,
Yeah.
So I never in my life dreamed I'd be a venture capitalist, but here I am, so I have this with some partners, have a $42 million investment fund called Power Plant Ventures. And, our premise is that, we're going to help to transform our multi-trillion-dollar global food system to deliver better health in more ethical and sustainable ways. And we're trying to find, fund, and help scale the best entrepreneurs in the world.
Well, and this is good because it's a timely topic. And I know, as for example, there's one of our Cashflow Diary members who is in the agricultural space down in San Diego. And hopefully
cool.
he picks up and is listening to this particular episode. But it sounds like that the two of you are peas made in a pod, because he's always talking to me about, I'm like, I know nothing about food, man, but I get it. I get that it's great, but I can't help you. But it sounds like you're not only just investing money, but it sounds like you're also investing time with these early stagers. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, look, this is a commitment my partners and I have made to, the way we want to contribute to the world. And so I at any one time, I'm probably helping, advising, talking with, I don't know, 30, 50 entrepreneurs. We've invested in, and that's at any one time, it's probably, a couple hundred over the course of a year. We've invested in, 8 companies. So if somebody's got a real commitment to make a positive impact in the world, and I can be of help, I want to be of help. Sometimes it's 5 minutes, sometimes it's 5 hours. But the companies we invest in, we go deep. We want to empower the entrepreneurs. We don't want to run the companies. But if we need to step in and help them think about branding or strategy or team building or hiring a key executive or, entering a new channel of business or a product line, we'll dive in anywhere and everywhere to help. And I think that's what good investors do.
Agreed 100%. So I've got a question for you that'll be the final question. But before we get to that, I know that a number of people have been listening and they're intrigued by the story. A number of them probably drinking Zico as we're talking, because they're on the treadmill right now. Right. So, but for those that want to find out more, either get a copy of the book or find out more about what Power Plant's up to, what's going to be the best way for them to track you down?
Sure. Yeah, I am a terrible social media guy, but I'll give you a couple options. One, the book High Hanging Fruit, you can order on Amazon or any of your other favorite booksellers. It's available pretty much everywhere. You can Power Plant Ventures. We're just getting a website up and running because we just got the fund up. So I think there's a placeholder at powerplantvc.com. I am LinkedIn is probably the best place to get me. Just Mark Rampolla. You'll be able to, not too many of us in the world are online. Me there. I'm not great at getting back on email, but I welcome anybody that's interested in the space, especially, and just anyone to reach me at mark@powerplantvc.com.
Excellent. Okay, so now I've got to ask the question. So, many people are listening. They want to become an entrepreneur. They want to take their business to the next step. Maybe they're, trying to make that pivot, but whatever they're doing, here's what I know. Even if they're just standing in front of the superhero outfit store for the first time, trying to pick out their own cape and mask and figure out what they're going to do, they've got that voice in the back of their head, Mark. And it's a voice that I know you've done battle with time and time again. It's that voice that comes up every time we want to reach for that something that is great. And it
Yes.
comes up and it's loud, and unfortunately, occasionally
Yes.
we're related to it.
Yes.
My question for you though is, let's pretend that this person is ready. They will do exactly what you suggest in the next
Yes.
24 to 48 hours. What would you tell them to do?
Yes. All right. So specifically to that issue, that nagging voice that's in all of our heads, the first thing I would tell somebody is wake up. It never goes away. Okay. It's not like you find success or you become 20 or 30 or 40 or 80 years old. That voice never goes away. The only thing you can do is recognize it and not let it have its power. And I found one particular technique to be very helpful in that. And it's called limiting beliefs. I stole it from, I think it's Jack Canfield, an old time, self-help guy. Anyway, the technique is you physically write them down and you rephrase them and you turn them into powerful drivers. So for example, mine was, I'm not really an entrepreneur. I'm a corporate guy that has nothing to do with entrepreneurs. I don't really have the energy and drive. That was my limiting belief. It's nagging voice in my head.
Wow.
I write it down, and I wrote down that I still keep with me and have them around, and handy.
Wow.
But I would turn that around and say, I am so blessed and so fortunate to have the energy and drive, and I've shown that again and again that I have that drive. Maybe it's not as much as other people have, but it's more than enough that I need to get this job done, right? Wow. One of my limiting beliefs was, how can I want more? I'm so happy already. I'm successful. I'm blessed. I come from a great family. I must be a greedy son of a bitch to want more, right?
Wow.
And I switched that around to say, you know what? I am so happy that I am, right, living in the present, even when I didn't have this. I'm so fortunate to be a generous, contributing person of means and fortune and abundance. And I'm so happy to prove that you don't have to be a jerk when you're well off,
Yes.
And so physically going through the exercises of writing those things down and reframing them and coming back to them all the time was super, super important for me and still is to this day.
Wow. You saved the best for last there, sir. I totally appreciate everything that you've shared with us here.
Well, you're the only one that's ever asked me that question, and I think it's one of the most important questions.
Yeah. It takes I don't know, it could take us out. It stops, it could stop a great product, any product or service from coming to the market or stepping into the greatness that I think we were all born to be.
Absolutely. I love it.
So I appreciate, though, everything that you've shared with us today. And I definitely appreciate you taking the time and continuing and now passing it on by helping those lessons learned and investing in other entrepreneurs to help them do the same. And I thank you for sharing your wisdom here with us at the Cashflow Diary.
Well, it's my pleasure, Jay. And I appreciate what you're doing. Because I'll tell you, just even the word in your title, cash flow, that's one thing every business person needs to understand. And so few really do, for their business and for life. So I think it's a good message.
Awesome. All right, ladies and gentlemen, you know what time it is. It's time for you to move at the speed of instruction. I know this. Some of you have that nagging voice, and I think we just heard one of the best answers and solutions to it. So what should you do? Recognize it and not let it have its power. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been fun talking to you today. I look forward to talking to you soon. Until next time.